All right, people, welcome back to another episode of the UnCommonCool show. I'm your host, Neek. Got a special guest in the building this go around. We got a founder of BlackSportsOnline. He goes by the name of Rob Littal. How you doing, Rob?
I'm doing well. Appreciate you having me on. Love what you do.
Hey, man, appreciate that. Start things off. I wanted to get kind of into your background a little bit. We spoke a little bit just now off the record. You are from St. Louis.
Yeah.
And how was it growing up in St. Louis? Because I personally don't even know a lot of people from St. Louis, but people say it's a bad area and stuff like that. So, how was it growing up in St. Louis?
Well, I mean, in St. Louis, and I've had the opportunity to travel to several different, big cities, small cities throughout my career. And St. Louis is very similar to any hood, in America. If you stayed, in the hood. I mean, when you're going through it as a kid, you don't really realize it. You just that's just your neighborhood, and you see violence, you see drugs, you see the gangs and stuff like that. But you're 9, 10, 11 years old. It's just part of what it is. It's only until you when I went to high school, I went to a Catholic high school, and my mom sent me out to a school that was probably 95% white.
Right.
But the crazy thing about it is St. Louis is not a huge city, so it was only about 20, 30 minutes from my house.
Right.
So it seemed like a totally different world, even though 20 minutes now being in LA, that could be 5 miles.
Right.
but just seeing that, wow, what's going on this side of the city is so different than what's going on my side of the city. So at that young age, 14, 15 was kind of my first experience of the two different kind of Americas that we can live in within the same, city. But I was very lucky, had a lot of family around, had a lot of good friends that were around that saw some potential in me, teachers, the church, a lot of people that saw potential in me and kept me out of some of that other stuff that other people were getting into. So in retrospect, I really think about my childhood, like, it was tough, and we had it a little bit rough. But considering, kind of what, you see now these days, like I was very blessed to be born into the family and friends that I was born into.
Right. Got you. And like just speaking of, St. Louis, still staying on that topic. I don't want to get into your age and nothing, what area or era you grew up in, but I say that to say you don't really hear about a lot of maybe like super famous people out of St. Louis. So the Nellies and when the Rams were there and things like that. On the surface, how big of a city, do you think St. Louis plays into maybe like other kind of like major cities, so to say?
The way I look at St. Louis is like this. Let's look at it like the NCAA, right? You know how you got your majors, right? Your big schools, right? Then you got like Marshall or what's the one that's always like Gonzaga?
Gonzaga,
like St. Louis would be like the Gonzaga of the state. It's an interesting city because it's right in the middle of the country. So no matter which way you go, you got to kind of pass through, and it's connected to all of these other cities, like Chicago's right there on that side, but then Ohio and stuff is on this side, and then below it you got your Tennessee, your Nashville, your Memphises, and then above it you got your Michigans. So it's kind of, and then your Atlanta's down on the corner, and then if you go straight down, you're Texas. So it's like it's right there, and one of the things I say, which come to your point, is because there's no real like famous person there, right? St. Louis has its own culture, but when I was there, when I was growing up in the I would say, my teen years of like the mid 90s and stuff, we didn't have that culture, so we would grab it from other spaces. So I was big on like East Coast rap, but I was also big with Dre and Snoop and Tupac. I listened to Wu-Tang and LL and then all of this stuff. And then you had Atlanta come in, so I listened to Ludacris and Outkast. So it's kind of like a little gumbo city, where it has its own style and its own flavor, but it's picked from like literally cultures kind of all over.
Right. So when the Nellies and you know his crew and you know Chingies and stuff, when they took off, was it like okay, we never seen nothing like this before? Like this is like, you know, top of the top. Like these guys was like superstars in the rap game and stuff like that. And
well,
you know,
the interesting thing, is during the Nelly days, you know, he's around us, you know, we're around the same thing, like we knew each other.
Right.
Like the city's so small that, especially back then, where it wasn't as many rappers, and I rapped too. You just was in that, you know, circle. And so everybody was trying to get on. And then he gets on, and it wasn't like he was the first St. Louis rapper to like get a record deal. He was just the first one that outside of the regional area. I remember I was taking a trip. My dad lived in Kentucky at the time, Louisville, Kentucky. And I hadn't really been all over the country, but I was taking like a road trip to get to, you know, my dad and stuff. And I remember hearing Nelly when I was in Louisville and when I had passed by Atlanta. And I'm like, wait a minute, this may be more than just, because we've always heard local, you know, artists. This guy may be not. Then he came out, his record was like number 2 or 3. Back then, that was a big deal. Like, you know, with Billboard back then, you know, you had to physically go and buy. And we went all this streaming and all this stuff. So, you know, he was out there selling as much as Lil' Kim. You know, and that was a big, you know, that's back when Lil' Kim was, you know, right after Biggie and all this stuff. So what we thought was it was kind of going to be like Atlanta, where that was going to be the stepping stone. And it was going to be a flood of artists that kind of came through. But instead, you know, it was just kind of him, and then it kind of leveled out.
Right. Got you. And you know, you did mention you did used to rap. I actually heard you talk about that in a couple of interviews that you used to rap. So how was your transition from rapping to, you know, whether you was taking it serious or not, playing around, trying to, whatever you were trying to do with it, taking it from that transition to, you know what, I'm gonna go to school route, I'm gonna go be a journalist. You know, when was it that you woke up one day and was like, all right, man, let me stop messing around, let me go do this?
Well, I was always a realist. Like, you know, I always realized that, you know, with certain careers, you know, it's a 1 in a million shot. You know, you know, it's like even now, yes, there's probably millions of rappers out there. But if you ask somebody name like 15 rappers, it's the same 15, you know, from everybody. You don't, it's very difficult to become successful in any type of entertainment thing. So the entire time I was focused on, hey, I might have to get a, you know, real job. And the thing about the journalism and the sports journalism specifically was I wanted to do that. I was into it even when I was a young kid. Like I grew up in the age where with the television as an only child, like, especially with it wasn't like now where there's 1,000 streaming channels, 1,000 cable channels. Back when I grew up, you had about, if you had cable, if you was lucky enough to have cable, you had like 35, 40 channels. And if your parents was, you know, had a couple of dollars, maybe you got HBO. So I grew up where the main channel was the local channels and like ESPN. And it's not ESPN like today. It's ESPN where, you know, they was playing like Australian rules football. They didn't have all the rights. But the one thing they had was Sports Center. And I would watch Stuart Scott, Dan Patrick, and Keith Olbermann. And that's how, you know, I kind of got into sports, because they would show soccer, tennis, like in the summer, I watched baseball games, because not necessarily because I like baseball that much. That was the only thing that was on. And so I was interested in that aspect of, if I wanted a career, that's what I wanted to do. It was the, you know, era of, oh, I want to play, you know, football and basketball. I want to rap. That was, you know, just part of that era that I was in. But I was always realistic. I went to college like, hey, you got to, you know, have a degree and stuff like that. So at a point, you know, I'll tell you the exact story. I was in the mall. I think I was about 24 or something at the time. And there was a guy at the mall, and he was the janitor at the mall. And he's sweeping up, and he was handing out flyers, though. And it was flyers to like a little open mic show or something. My boy was 40. Okay. Now, I'm not saying, you know, don't chase your dreams you know, forever.
Let's be realistic now, you know.
I'm like, you know, something, I don't want to be, you know, I don't want to miss out on other stuff because, you know, I'm 20, you know, because back then, I think nowadays you can be a little bit older rapper. But remember back then, rap wasn't that the history wasn't that long.
Right.
So it was like you rap from like 16 to like 30, and then that was it. There was no like Jay-Z's and anything like that. They were still, you had to be young and your career was short. So I'm like, I don't want to be a 30-year-old rapper. That's not what the label's looking for. They want the 17, 19, 18-year-olds.
Yeah.
So at that point, I'm like, I need to focus on this full time because I need some sort of career that I can hang my hat on. So I hung up, my mic around that time.
Right. Got you. So, from there, you end up going to Ohio State. What made you pick Ohio State?
That's an interesting story. So it wasn't any real affinity for Ohio State. I was actually a Michigan fan.
Right.
In my youth because they had the Fab Five.
Right.
So I like the Fab Five. I like Desmond Howard. I was a big Michigan guy. But at that time, my father lived in Columbus, Ohio. And I wanted to get out of St. Louis. You ever just been somewhere for so long?
Right.
You're like, I want to go. But I wasn't stupid enough to say I want to go somewhere where I can't drive down to somebody's house and get some money. Right. So my dad was, so I can get in-state tuition because he was a resident there.
Yeah.
And, he had been, my dad has always been in my life, but he was always away,
right.
places. So this is a good time. 18 years old, can bond with my pops, but I can still be on campus. I went there. It's a real nice campus, big school, big, and one thing that people told me is if you go to Ohio State, once you leave, you always find somebody, an alumni that'll be willing to help you and everything. So I ended up, going there for that reason. And the funny thing about it was after my freshman year, my dad got a job in Kentucky, which I was telling you about. So I had a choice to leave or stay, but I had enjoyed my time there in the first freshman year. I kind of fell in love with the campus and kind of stayed there from there.
Right. Got you. So, you go through, your 4 years at Ohio State, you graduate. Right after that, from the time period from graduating to actually starting BSO, what were you doing in between time?
Terrible. So the one thing they don't tell you, well, I mean, I think somebody should tell you is that, you go to college and everything's great and you can kind of coast through your time. But if you don't make the right connections, you're not doing the right internships, you don't know the right people. When you get the diploma, you're just kind of on your own, without a lot of experience. Right. So, I get the diploma and I'm like, I'm going to be on ESPN.
Right.
It didn't quite work out, like that. So for, a couple of years, I'm just doing odd jobs. I'm working at the mall, just like the janitor. I'm working at the Macy's and I'm doing the call center. I had a job at Office Depot.
Right.
Just random stuff. But this was the same time that the internet, people don't understand the internet's not even that, the history of the internet is not that long.
Yeah.
When I was in college, to have an email address was a big deal. So it was still we were still on dial-up, back in those days.
Right.
But it was just the internet and getting your information off the internet was just coming about. And ironically, the idea for BSO came from when I was in college to sell my little mixtapes or mix CDs.
Right.
I had actually learned how to develop websites to sell them online. And then I would ship them off to different cities when people would order them. It was a nice little hustle and everything.
Right, yeah.
So I had this ability to build websites basically from scratch.
Right.
And I'm like, I need to do something while I'm looking for my quote unquote TV job, radio job or whatever. So I'm like, I'm going to, I saw something where Joe Buck had called Randy Moss a thug during the playoff game. And I said, something, there in the online space, at least, even in all spaces, honestly, there wasn't a lot of Black voices. So I'm going to make a site that's specifically for our people.
Right.
Because at that time, I was the same age as the athletes.
Right.
I'm 25 years old.
Right.
So I'm in the same mental, and I come from the same place they come from.
Right.
So I'm like, I can give a better perspective than some of these other guys. And that's how the idea sparked for BSO.
Right. Okay. And you developed the idea of BSO. Obviously, in most stories like that, it don't take off right away. So, how long was it that you saw yourself kind of making progress? Maybe the first couple of years was kind of slow. It was a lot of work. You probably felt like you wasn't getting out of it what you was putting in. But like, what kind of where did it kind of start picking up for you? And if I could be wrong, but was it for you? Was it the Steve McNair story that kind of took you off?
That's the story that's I always tell people. It's a combination. So it's about 4 years of pretty much nothingness.
Right.
So it was a combination of things. The Steve McNair story is the first story that I did that got notoriety outside of just a small bubble of loyal readers that I had, because I was the first one. It's not like today. If something like that happened today, it would be leaked so fast on Twitter, 1 million people.
Right.
Back then, there was no social media as we know it right now.
Right.
So I got it by accident. I just happened to know someone who was a cop in Memphis, who texted me or call, I can't believe I think they text or called or emailed or something and said, "Hey, I'm at this crime scene and such. You may want to get this up." In retrospect, probably shouldn't have did it because he was my only source. I could have been totally wrong. Could have been totally somebody different. Right. At that point, I'm 26 years old. I don't know no better. So I just did it, and it got caught up in Google. And when they went to backtrack, who was the first one to report on it? It was me.
Right.
But I would say the real change is not so much that story; it's the change in technology.
Right.
Because we went from a society where, you had to, just kind of like anything else in society, where, having the internet, having high-speed internet, having smartphones, where normally you had to be had a lot of money. You had to, not rich, but you had to be well off to get this, to the point where it became affordable for people to have. Everybody, desktops used to be really, thing, but now people got laptops and smartphones, and social media comes, and you got Twitter, and now you got Instagram, you got Facebook blowing up. And you got all of these different ways to get information outside of your regular bubble.
Right.
And that's when everything would change, because now I had a way. Before, if I had a story, I had to go myself, go to every message board, put it out there, hope it would get caught up in Google. Now, just using today as an example, I can do the story about the Cubs guy that was cheating. The pastor was sleeping with his wife.
Right.
I can do that at 10 p.m. my time. Right. Go to sleep and then wake up, and I wake up and say, that seems like it's doing pretty well. And look and see, because of Facebook, because of Twitter, because of the way organically things move now, it's reached 100,000 people, 200,000 people, and all I had to do is click one button.
Right. Got you.
When that started to change and more people started to go online instead of offline for their news, that's when the business started to pick up.
Right. And, speaking of the way social media going now, you've built up, your platform to where, you pretty much, you're a well-known entity in the media game. Do you think social media now makes it easier for people to just start off the street one day and look, you can go to the top in a week or two, just whether you want to do journalism or you want to do entertainment or whatever, with the way the internet going, how do you see that, what I'm saying, helping people, reach their goals faster than they ever could before?
It's a catch-22. It's definitely easier because anybody can do it now. I wouldn't discourage anybody from going to college. I think that taught me life skills and people skills that were very important. But like you just said, anybody could, if they get lucky enough, could get in the mix and become real popular, real famous quickly. I see what these TikTokers are doing, or the Instagram influencers and everything. Now, the gift and the curse of that is everybody's doing it. Right. When I started, the amount of, I would say, sports independent blogs was probably in the thousands. Right. They're in the millions now.
Right.
When podcasts started, wasn't a lot of people. Everybody has podcasts.
Right.
Everybody has a YouTube channel now.
Right.
Everybody so it's spread out more. So you're trying to get noticed instead of a small fish in a small pond. Now you're a small fish in the ocean.
Yeah.
And you see certain people blow up, right? But there's so many other people. Like I was watching something yesterday. A guy did a really good tweet about something. It was really funny. Whatever. I think it was about Ben Simmons or something like that, right?
Right.
Well, a bigger platform just stole the tweet
Right.
So his tweet, got like 20 retweets or whatever it may be. The stolen one had like 10,000 retweets. And now you got all these people coming, and the person didn't give him any credit or anything.
Right.
And now their platform is, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's so much that it's easier and harder at the same time because you're competing against other outlets. And then maybe the other really hard part is that when I started, mainstream media and independent media really did two different things, right? So you had two different lanes, right? They wasn't up on the culture. They wasn't up on the news stuff. Right. Now they smarten up and realize that engagement comes from that, right? So I see like a wild headline from like ESPN, and I'm like, come on now.
Yeah.
Phrases like IG models and stuff like that. You see that on New York Post, and you're like, okay, now where you guys are, basically taken from that, and now it's harder because if ESPN says it, even BSO is a big outlet. I can't compete, with that.
Right.
So when you see them using certain terms and using memes that, we made popular and stuff like that, it's harder, I would say, than it was 3, 4, 5 years ago.
Right. Yeah. Because it seemed like independent media, like when they were making its way through, especially with somebody like you, like urban culture, I guess, if you want to call it that. Urban culture was like, that's a big deal or whatever. So like now you are seeing a lot of big entities using, pop culture terms and all these other things. And it's like, whoa, like if no names were on it, I wouldn't know if it was, ESPN or if it was, BSO or something like that. So, it's just funny. Crazy.
Like just certain stories that they would have never touched years ago, they touch now. Like I remember I did a story a couple of months back about the Lakers fan getting catfished by some girl.
Yeah.
And then I see it on the Jump. Like this shit, like that's not something they would touch, years. But now they say, well, dang, I helped make that trend. Right. And then they take it and then repackage it. Right. But they don't want to say my name because then that gives me, they don't want me to get too big.
Yeah.
So it's really a fine line of working with them, working with the leagues, working with the networks, but also knowing that they don't want you to get like Barstool, where you become so big, you don't need them, and you can kind of just do whatever you want to do.
Yeah. And speaking of, kind of like the transition the media is going into, when did you figure out that kind of blending entertainment and sports together was like, okay, this is the way to go? Because, sports, the whole country for the most part loves sports, but they love gossip too, or they love, it's a big, what I'm saying? It's a big market for that type of stuff. So when did you feel like, you might have been hearing things about players from different teams and stuff like that, whether they was cheating on their wives or, IG models or whatever the case may be. When did you feel like, okay, I need to start like reporting on these things because it's high engagement for me?
Well, it's a numbers game. Like the numbers don't lie. And, that's something that Jay-Z says is that when you do stories, you can see what the engagement is and who's reading them and who's watching them and who's listening. Like as all those numbers come back to you. So no matter what people are saying, externally, what they're saying, to you, internally, if they like it or not. They can say, oh, I hate these type of stories. This is whack. This isn't news. This isn't that. But when those stories are doing double a trade story, you know what I mean? Like that lets you know that somebody is watching. I think it's actually got to the point where they've understood that. Like I said, it's even, like I said, even mainstream media now talks about it more. I mean, what do you think? Like, why is Inside the NBA, so good? It's because they don't really talk about basketball.
Right.
Why is First Take? Why is Skip Bayless making $8 million a year? Because they don't really talk about X's and O's. know, and all of that's stolen from not just me, just from. I'm sorry, my dog is going.
Oh, no, you go.
But it's stolen from what that lane. And the reason to answer your question, I started it because nobody else was doing it.
Right.
I noticed that when I started the sports site, the sites that for Black people that were really doing well were on the internet were sites like Bossip,
right,
and sites like Media Takeout,
right,
and sites like Nicole Bitchy back in the
right.
day, which were Black entertainment gossip sites.
Right.
But there was nothing that branched that with sports. They don't know sports. They're entertainment people. And what happened is that now with social media, more of the entertainment side was available because the athletes were out there at the strip club.
Right.
They're out there. People had the cell phone videos. TMZ is out there catching them outside the club. When I saw that niche, I saw that lane, I saw them stats, I just drove right through it.
Right. For sure. And with that said, with how fast, like now things are happening literally like every day. You know what I'm saying? Is it a lot of work kind of keeping up with things? Things happen overnight, things happening, doing on weekdays now instead of, you probably guaranteed to catch something on the weekend. Guys go out, women go out to the clubs, whatever, things may happen on the weekends and stuff. But now, it's things happening during the week. Has it like kind of, driven your work ethic a little bit? Like, oh man, like I gotta be on it. Like you and your team, like, oh, we got to be on it now. Like, it's Twitter stories happening overnight when we sleep. That's like, you wake up in the morning, you see like, wow, like this happened last night. Like it's so many things happening literally like every hour on the hour. How do you kind of keep up with that and kind of like to choose, okay, this is really big, we need to go ahead and put this out, that was cool, but it wasn't really nothing.
Right. Well, there was a time where I was really grinding it out. I mean, I'm talking 16 hours, a day, getting up at 7, 8, going all the way through to 1, 2 a.m. Trying to catch, every little thing. Now, also, this was the same time I was trying to build, the brand. So I was doing that. And I tell you something, it's not healthy. Okay.
Oh yeah. Well,
I wouldn't advise anyone to do that, but now, I'm married, I have a family, it's important to be able to separate and understand you can't get to every story when it happens. Like it can't be like that. You'll just run yourself, into the ground, and you'll mess up your relationships, as well. I mean, if I go out to dinner with my wife, she doesn't, if I'm over here on the phone and, that's not, healthy. If my little girl wants some attention, she's a baby. I can't, like you got to provide for your family and everything, but you also got to find that separation. The good thing I would say, at least for me, is I've done this for so long now. I have an eye of what will pop and what won't pop. And I try to maximize, my time. And what I always tell people that come in and maybe contribute for me, or they're doing their own thing, is if you don't catch it at the beginning, that's fine. Look for the side angle. Because if everybody's talking about one thing, you got to look for something that they're not talking about and stress that. So I give you just an example if anybody's watching, right? There's a story that this is just a regular story. Kyle Kuzma wants out of, or thinking about testing, the waters in a bigger market, right? So every title is, Kyle Kuzma's this, Lakers are thinking about trading Kyle Kuzma. So say you missed that. You can't put it on there, right? So I say, well, Kyle Kuzma is tired of being in LeBron's shadow. Just a little side. Wait a minute, that's a little different. I didn't hear that part of it. I go through the story and I find the side story. Same thing with like say Chris Paul. Now that was one I missed. I was asleep. I'm on the West Coast. He,
with the COVID thing, right?
It's 3 hours later. I wake up. Chris Paul's not, playing, but da. So okay, well, I can't talk about that. But wait a minute though. People are talking about LeBron was with Drake and he didn't get. So now it's like Chris. Social media wants to know why LeBron didn't get punished by the NBA, but Chris Paul gets punished by the NBA. You know what I mean? So it's you can't catch everything when it's happening in real time. You can't be. Sometimes you are like, what was the stuff? The Carmelo Anthony and the Twins.
I
caught that right when it happened. I was sitting here. I got an alert. a lot of my audience doesn't read like the Hollywood Unlocked. So
Right.
I caught it before TMZ, caught it before anybody else. So when I posted, that was the first time anybody was seeing it.
Right.
So sometimes it happens like that. You're lucky. You just sitting there and it falls in your lap. Other times you got to be a little bit more creative in finding a different angle to tell the same story.
Right. And just going from there, transitioning to just the sports part of it, over since you've started this and still to this day, I'm pretty sure you've been to tons of events that you've covered, whether it's Super Bowl, NBA Finals, NCAA tournament, whatever the case may be. How do you I want to say, how was your kind of like your confidence in these places? Because like I said, with you being an independent, you being independent media, it's not, a black guy as well. It's not a lot of people doing it like that. So, when you go to your first big event, maybe when you first started, whether it was a, championship game, whatever the case may be, how were you kind of conducting yourself around, in these events where you're like, hey man, look, I'm next up. You're gonna have to, look up. Or it's like, hey, I'm just here to do my job just like y'all are.
Well, it's a lot of pressure just being black. Okay. In anything that you do. It's a lot of pressure being independent. It's a lot of pressure when you do certain type of stories like I do, because people are looking at you, a certain way. This is when the college, the education, the knowledge and stuff of actually understanding how journalism works comes into play, because this is all the stuff that they taught me. It's weird. What makes me money, right, is not what I was taught. Okay. It's honestly not necessarily even what I'm interested in. I'm interested in the games. I'm interested in the X and O's and stuff. It's the other people are interested in the other stuff. I got to get the check. It's the whole thing. Like I always say, it's the whole thing with Skip Bayless and Stephen A and stuff. Like, they know they've been journalists for 20, 30 years. They know the game. But they want to get paid. So they give people what they want to get paid. To me, I give people what they want so I can get paid and I can get the recognition, so I can put myself in these professional positions to be able to handle myself and do the things that I want to do, which are cover the big events and everything like that. And at that point, it is a lot of pressure, because at least previously, they didn't like to let a lot of online media into the events, right? So when you are there, you have to take that into account, that if it's a press conference on a random Wednesday at the Indiana Pacers is not going to be put on ESPN live at 10 p.m. with everybody watching. The NBA Finals with LeBron and Steph Curry, you're on NBA TV, TNT, you're live. The camera's in your face. You have to ask LeBron James a question. The NBA, every official from the Adam Silver, they all there. Okay. If you mess that up, you're not going to get called on no more. It's not like if you work for ESPN, you can ask a stupid question. They got
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So that's why you see it like why are these people from ESPN asking all these stupid questions? They can, because they got the backing. The clout. If I ask a stupid question, I can essentially be, blackballed out of the entire thing. So to me, it's very, very important. And as I told somebody, it was interesting. I remember I did the finals and Tristan Thompson was there. They're like, ask about Chloe. I'm like, time and place, my brother. Like, he's playing right now. You know what I'm saying? If this was the off season and he was cheating, fine. But right now, I'm not gonna ask the man about that. Like, you gotta understand. And the players, they know who you are. So, but they respect the fact that when you're face to face, first off, you're not ducking. A lot of the people that talk crazy or do those type of stories, you never see their face. They're never nowhere. So the players don't respect that, because they feel like you just taking shots and you're not there. I've always had respect from the players, because they're like, damn, BSO will write that crazy headline about me, but he's right there. So if I have a problem, or if I have it, they've come to me and said stuff,
Of course.
But I'm there. And we talk it out, and I'm like, I'm not, in the middle of game 4, I'm not going to ask you anything crazy of a series. I'll ask you, what was their possession like when this, or did you feel like, I want to ask you some real basketball, questions. Now, if you go and get drunk doing that, I'm going to write that story too. So, I mean, it goes both ways. So, yeah, it's not as much pressure anymore because I've done so much. People know who I am. So I can walk in and like, that's Rob, and we know he's not going to do anything crazy or anything. But yeah, at the beginning, it was like I felt privileged to be able to get into a Super Bowl when the guy told me, he said, "You're the first Black website that's not connected to a major network that we ever let in the building." Ever. First one ever. And for years, they were like, we don't let independent online media in. You can do the media day. You can do the week. We don't let you in the stadium.
Wow.
You don't get in the stadium.
Wow.
That's what they say. We don't let independent media not associated with a network in the stadium. Right. And I just kept pressing them every year. I said, I'm doing this. I'm doing NBA finals. I'm doing NCAA tournaments. Why are you not letting me in? They let me in. He said, I remember when he gave me the credential, he said, you're the first one. He said, so you start everybody else. So anybody else that's in there, that came from me. Either they like me, even if they hate me and like me, the reason they in there is because I went in there first and asked a good question to Bill Belichick.
Right. Got you. And speaking of all these events you've been to, I wanted to ask you what was like the biggest event you've been to thus far? Like, obviously, you've been to multiple Super Bowls, All-Star games and stuff like that. So it's kind of getting normal to you. Like, you know how to, what's one event you've been to? You was like, wow, okay, this is different right here. Like this, I've never seen nothing like this before.
It's a good question. I mean, going to a Super Bowl is different.
I can imagine. I can imagine.
You know why? Because it's a one time, like the thing about the NBA finals is that's a big event. And if it gets to game 7, that's a big, but it's, it's 7.
Yeah, it's a series. Yeah, right.
Same thing with the Final Four, such and such.
Right.
Honestly, I tell you, the biggest event that I ever covered that I thought was the wildest thing of all time was I went to WrestleMania, covered for the WWE in Dallas, and 120,000 people there.
Right.
100,000 people getting thrown off cages and all of this stuff, and to see the production and to see that many people. Just in a stadium going crazy for all of this, the Rock is all of that, all this stuff. That was, huge. But I tell you, the most electric are the fighting events, the UFC, the boxing, the big boxing matches. When Conor McGregor, fought
Floyd.
Floyd. Stuff like those are. It's a different energy in that building, and especially because in fighting sports, it can be over. Just like that. You can't blame it.
Yeah.
So I would say, probably, I'm trying to think which, Canelo and Triple G was a really big, thing. The Mayweather fights were always big events, but nothing really compares to like a Super Bowl. That's like really big.
Wow. What makes you say a Super Bowl? Is it just because of the magnitude or
it's
like when you think of,
because sometimes the games are not great, but it's just this aura about it, and it's like that's the marquee event in sports in the United States. So it's like it's such a big deal, and then to have the opportunity. One thing about the Super Bowl, which is a little different than say the NBA Finals, which is a little more controlled as far as doing the press conferences and stuff like that. It's a Super Bowl. The losers come in and they're right there. Sometimes still in uniform, right there with the winners. And I remember Cam Newton, lost the Super Bowl. And this is a true story. Cam Newton was in there and they were asking him some really stupid questions. And he left after about like 2 minutes or so. And everybody was giving him a hard time, calling him unprofessional and all of this stuff. And I was the one to report. I said, no, he answered every single question that was asked. He didn't answer like long-winded, but he answered. And there was a guy off to the side, like an NFL guy, said, that's all. He, that's it. No more questions. I say, all he did was just listen to the guy on the side that said he didn't have to answer any more questions. He just lost the Super Bowl. He wasn't going to give you, so he just lost. I mean, what do you expect him to say? And that part of me telling that got picked up by other next. So it, that's why our representation, matters, to keep that perception, because if not, people just run with, what they're told from other people.
Right. Got you. And just speaking of that, what do you think about the perception of like black media and the black athlete like today? We kind of think that perception is like, in this day and age.
I don't think media in general has a good relationship with athletes right now.
Right.
I think the reason why is like we talked about before. There's so much more media.
Mm-hmm.
Also, there's much more scrutiny on the athlete because the access to them is more because they're showing more themselves. So, if after a game, if somebody puts up an Instagram post, there's 150 stories about it,
Right.
a quote like the quote from Joel Embiid about Ben Simmons as something that 10 years ago, maybe you see it on Sports Center, is on Twitter and trending, So I think the relationship between media and the trust is broken because to make money in media now you gotta be a hot taker.
Right.
So they don't trust the media. They're willing to speak about it. Black media specifically, I think it's problematic two ways. Is that when you have the biggest people in black media or on ESPN or on FS1, and you see black athletes and people like Kwame Brown saying these guys are part of the get up, get along gang and all this stuff. And people are co-signing, the other athletes are co-signing that.
Right.
It's difficult because, as black people, I always say this, as black people, we have a lot of going against us from other people, right?
Right.
Then we infight with ourselves a lot. So it's like a double, whammy.
Right.
And we as black media sometimes don't even protect each other.
Right.
We say it a lot. We should need more representation, but oftentimes we're backstabbing each other and going against each other and fighting against each other and talking bad about each other. Like I had to learn that. If I disagree with somebody in black media, 5-6 years ago, I would call them out publicly. But then I realized it's white people that are getting off on this entertainment.
Right.
So now, even if there's people in black media that say things about me or tries to come at me or try to go, I ignore it because I don't want to give them the entertainment value of us infighting. Like I always say, I'm not hard to find. You find me easy. Right. If you have an issue, just come to me. And it bothers me that now, as black people, we air out a lot of our issues publicly, and that only hurts our cause, in totality.
Right. Got you. And just a couple more things for you. Since you've been in this business and obviously you built relationships with different media people and athletes as well. Are there any athletes that you have like kind of pretty close relationship with? Like, you guys are, pretty good friends and things like that, or media members that you feel like you're pretty good friends with?
Well, I think just being in the business, you end up becoming friends with media people because you see them, all the time. And there's been people that have come up under BSO that's went on to bigger and better things that I consider really, close friends.
Right.
And just proud to be a little part of their success. It was their hard work that did it, but just to help them get into the business. I always try to stay away from the athlete friendships because if something happens,
you gotta,
you know what I mean? Like you think. So I mean, I always, try to be respectful for them, but I a lot of media, and this, a lot of media are fans.
Right.
They want to be the friends of the athletes because they wish they were the athletes. And like we talked about earlier in the podcast, I mean, I used to rap, so I'm used to being first in the forefront anyway.
Right.
So like, I never really had this thing like, oh, I want to be cool with such and such, so I can say I'm cool with Kevin Durant. I've never been like that. I would say the only exception to that is maybe Chad Johnson. Because he's just a real hard person to not like.
Right.
So he's a really cool guy. He's really nice to people, and he's always been nice, to me. So he's the one guy that I can just like, oh, who would you be cool with? Like just calling up and talk. He's always, he's like, if I'm in a city and I'm covering something, he's like, oh, come on, I'll take you to dinner and get you coffee, whatever it may be. He's just that, type of guy. But I never thought it was a good idea to try to befriend or even show like favoritism toward any athlete because they can always turn up like Aaron Hernandez. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. like you, and then what do? Because then you got your friend texting you like, why are you reporting about my DUI? That's my job.
Right.
But, but that's your friend, like I will say, like in media, there are certain things that, because I don't want Black media to look bad, I may not cover. But with the athletes, I have a very simple thing. If you don't get in trouble, you don't have to worry about it.
Right.
And if you because sometimes you'll get Black athletes and say you only posting about the negative stuff.
Right.
If somebody gets arrested, it's the news. You know what I mean? It's to me, it's different. Like if you get arrested on, say, suspected of domestic violence, that's news. You got to report on that, right? Now, if I heard from my cousin and his girlfriend that such and such player was smacking around his girlfriend, I'm not gonna report it, just because I heard it. I mean, that to me, that's some outlets are like that. Some, especially those Instagram outlets, are very much like, we heard from this, he does this to this girl and this baby mama. I won't do that. If it's in the news, I'll report it, but I'm not gonna just look out to be slandering people.
Got you. And we just spoke about being at all these different types of events. What was like a big moment to you at maybe some of these events you covered, whether it was a Super Bowl or whether it's asking LeBron a question or asking Bill Belichick a question? What was like a personal big moment for you? It was like, okay, this was kind of cool. Like this is something I could tell my kids about. I could like, what was kind of like a personal big moment for you?
I think it was a big deal for me and the outlet with the NBA Finals, is in the fact that they decide that during the finals, unlike pretty much any other time during the year, they put the camera on the reporters, right? So when you ask your question, your family, you're on ESPN, that's millions of people. And when you ask a question to an elite player, a Kevin Durant, a LeBron James, a Steph Curry, I think the last finals I went to before everything went to the Rona and everything was the Toronto one. Yeah, it's Kawhi Leonard the question. Kawhi gave me a 3-minute answer.
Right.
That's Kawhi Leonard.
Yeah.
So doing that and then hearing the recognition, from people saying, so that was an excellent question. Why is Rob the only one asking good questions? Rob got Kawhi Leonard to talk about, the board man gets paid. He got LeBron to break down what was happening. He got KD to talk about Rihanna. That to me gives validation and credibility, to the site, because as I try, anybody can write up stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Anybody can tweet, stuff.
Right.
I'm not saying that it's not hard. I'm just saying that, there's people that are famous on Twitter. You don't even know what they look like.
Right.
You don't even know their name.
Right.
Like I saw some guy arguing with Pro Football Talk yesterday, and the Pro Football Talk guy says, you DM me a couple of times. We chat. I don't know who you are. I don't even know if it's your real name. I don't know where you live. Like, and you've been on here for 10 years.
Yeah.
So to go out in the field and do things, I think those are the most proud, moments for me. And then secondly, I think in reality is when I see other people that who work for me when they go do it, because those people don't understand. This is one thing people just see people there. Like, it's hard to get approved for a credential.
Right.
It's hard to become a beat reporter for a NBA, NFL team. And normally, if you don't have the right education and you haven't came up the ranks right, so to see people that, the only qualifications they had is I believed in them.
Right.
They go do that, and now they're living their dream out. That's what really, that really makes me, happy.
Right. Absolutely. And to close out here, a couple big events coming up here soon. You got we got the conference finals going on right now in the NBA. Finals prediction. Who you think going to the finals?
I like the Suns and the Bucks.
Suns and the Bucks.
I think the Bucks are. I think this was the Nets were their like mental hurdle. So I like the Bucks. I think Giannis is good, but I like the Suns too. But I if I had to put money on it right now, I would put it on the Bucks.
Okay, yeah. I can get behind that too. I can get behind the Bucks. We got Fury Wilder 3.
Yes,
coming up next month. Where you going with that one right there?
I've been telling people for a long time with Deontay Wilder it's boom or bust.
Right.
If he catches them, that's it. That's his thing. Like,
right.
It's funny because it's not complicated, but it's hard to make a prediction.
Right.
Because I don't think Fury's gonna I don't think he's gonna be the same as the second one. I don't think he's gonna walk through them
right. Yeah.
like
he
did before. I do think, he can still outbox him pretty much 100 times out of 100 times.
Right.
Now the question is Fury overconfident and ends up walking, into something? And also with boxing, it's always mental. Like, did he break Deontay Wilder? It's kind of like the Mike Tyson Buster Douglas thing. Is the mystique broken and all of that? If I had to put, I'm still going to go with Fury because I just don't know where Wilder is at, mentally. But it would not shock me if a Wilder is now, maybe had got a little lazy, a little bit too in love with his power, comes back, refocus, forget all the outfits, forget all the drama, and just get back to what he does, which is, knocking people out. Right.
I think it is a tough one to call, but I'm gonna go with Wilder. I think Wilder.
He has.
I think he get.
I did not like all of the excuses and stuff.
Right. Like, a lot of people. It rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. I
don't. Both of them are kind of sometimes can be hard to like.
Right.
For different reasons.
Right.
But it was interesting because at the press conference, I was at the press conference. I'm like, this is boxing. People say stupid stuff all the time, and then they get at the press conference and they're like, let's fight. I'm like, so I'm like, yeah, whatever. I'm just clean slate for everybody.
Right.
We'll see. It's going to get handled in the ring. And here's the thing. If Wilder wins, for all we know, it may end up being a fourth fight.
Right. Got you. Yeah, I think I'm gonna lean Wilder. I think if he does win, it'll have to be by knockout.
A knockout,
so, yeah. I think if he does win, he has to be by knockout. Then we got Errol Spence, Manny Pacquiao after that.
Yeah.
Who you leaning toward? Yeah.
You know something? I like Manny Pacquiao in this fight. Assuming
you like Manny Pacquiao.
That he hasn't gotten old overnight, because I think Spence is great. But, you're talking long layoffs, car accidents. I thought he looked good against Danny Garcia, but Danny didn't really put up much of a fight. I think, if Sean Porter can give Spence some problems, I think Pacquiao, if he hasn't gotten old overnight, I mean, the man is 42 years old.
Right.
I think it's a lot closer than a lot of people think. And, I think that if Pacquiao still has the speed, still has the movement, I think he's so slick. If he can make it through 12 rounds, I think he can find a way to win 7, of them off activity and off movement and stuff like that. Now, sometimes fighters get old overnight, and it's like, well, he maybe shouldn't have took that one. So I think it's going to be one or two things. Either, Spence just steamrolls him, but if it's competitive, I think I might take a fly on Pacquiao.
Right. Yeah. I think I'm gonna lean Spence on this one. I think he's 10 years younger than Manny Pacquiao. Yeah. It's like at some point, like,
right.
Yeah, Manny, Tom Brady of boxing, like, it's like, come on, man, like you be 45 knocking out 25-year-old guys and stuff like that, beat them. So it's like, man, at some point, something has to happen. So I think I'm gonna lean Spence on that one. And then shortly after that, we do have the NFL season coming up. So before the season starts, do you have a preseason prediction of a Super Bowl winner? Who you think taking it?
I think
who you think is going to be in the Super Bowl, or who you think is going to win it?
I think the Bucs are going to be better this year than they were last year. So I could see them, once again, unless Brady gets, overnight, I can see them running them back. In the AFC, it's interesting. I wonder, if people have figured out the Chiefs, now, like they don't find the blueprint, of it. But, I'm going to go with the Ravens. I think, they got a couple of receivers in there. I think Lamar's getting better. Defense is good. So I'm going to go Ravens, Bucks. But if it's not the Bucks, I like the Rams. I like that Stafford, coming in. They had the number 1 defense last year. They got Ramsey. It seems like the coach loves Stafford much more than he did old boys. So
right.
That's my little sleeper pick. But I'm Ravens, Bucks is what I'm
Yeah. I'm personally a Rams fan. I grew up a Rams fan, but that's a whole different, combo for another day. So of course, I'm gonna just be biased and pick them to go out of the NFC. But I think in the AFC, obviously, the Chiefs wouldn't shock me, but I'm gonna go with either the Ravens or I think Cleveland could go. I do think Cleveland might could get to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, you like Cleveland?
I like Cleveland, and then I like the Bills too. I think the Bills could probably do something too.
Yeah, the Bills, they're gonna.
Though any of those three, I think could it wouldn't surprise me at all if they was.
I think if the Bills were able to get like home field, right, and then now with the fans back, and people had to go to Buffalo in December, January, where it's really cold. Right, I think that could make a difference.
Right, yeah. I think the league probably will want like a Chiefs like Bucks again, running back type of, I think that's what the league would probably want if they had to pick. But I do think, I could see the Bills, the Browns, or the Ravens going. And then I think either it could be between the Bucks and the Rams. You don't know what's going on in Green Bay,
and all of that stuff. Right. That's the only reason. That's why I'm like Bucks, Rams to me.
Right, yeah. Then it's like it's not really another team in there. That's kind of like the Seahawks. Russell Wilson. There's nobody you could be like like they can probably go. So I'm gonna go with those two out of the NFC. But other than that, Rob, man, I appreciate you coming on, man. You spent a nice little chunk of change with me, man. You ain't had to do that, man. You ain't had to do that. So once again, man, I appreciate you coming on, man. Maybe we could do this again sometime in the future.
Anytime. You just let me know.
Yeah, maybe after one of these big events, Tyson Fury Wilder 3, you let me know how it was if you there.
They're gonna try to roll out. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. We can figure something out, man. So like I said, man, I appreciate you, man. Always, man. We gonna do this again another time.
All right. Talk to you soon.